Still looking at me.
What's up, Money Gang? It's the Multitasker. So Shadow just sent me another clip, a very interesting one, and this is something that I'm not aware about this, but the title is called the Vietcong Booby Traps. Not familiar of the name Vietcong, but obviously this takes place during the Vietnam War, and I'm too familiar about booby traps because when you think about it, when try to evade or raid into the nastiest jungle set, you gotta be careful of your surroundings because you never know what's there and which are completely unfamiliar or just basically just a little off. And yeah, you definitely wanted to make sure you have your eyes open because it's over, because shits like this, it's bound to happen. So because I can guarantee you that you are not going to be the same person or alive. So I don't want to waste any time with all this jibber jabber. So I'm going to go ahead and take a look at this. So without further ado, it's time to react.
Vietcong booby traps. The Vietnam War. During the Vietnam War, most of the operations U.S. Armed Forces conducted against Vietcong insurgents and the North Vietnamese Army took place deep in the jungles. As part of the South Vietnam pacifying program, General William Westmoreland, commander of the U.S. Army during the Vietnam War, applied the search and destroy tactic. The tactic included reconnaissance patrols deep in the insurgents' territory with the aim to find and eliminate their strong points. For the Americans and their allies, these missions were highly dangerous. As well as patrolling far away from their bases, soldiers were exposed to ambushes from an enemy that was well hidden and much better accustomed to fighting in the harsh environment of the jungle. However, the most terrifying threat to patrolling soldiers were booby traps. Booby traps were certainly one of the most notorious weapons of the Vietnam War, as they became an integral part of the war strategy of the Vietcong and the NVA. They were used so often that they served as both defensive and offensive weapons. During the war, Vietcong and NVA soldiers became highly experienced in making deadly contraptions that were responsible for the deaths of a great number of American soldiers. Booby traps were highly effective despite the fact that they were primitive and made using widely available materials such as bamboo, iron, mud, and coconuts. These devices were used to delay and disrupt the American forces and their allies. The threat of booby traps was often enough to slow any advance to a snail's pace, divert resources towards guard duty and clearance operations, inflict casualties, and damage equipment. When properly camouflaged, they were very difficult to detect, especially for soldiers exhausted by long and enduring patrols. Additionally, booby traps were often covered by snipers to trigger an ambush. Apart from being highly dangerous, booby traps were also used to psychologically sow fear among the enemy. The fear of booby traps was so great that field units were under constant stress, which created severe mental fatigue on both officers and soldiers. Punji stakes. Punji traps were long nails or sharpened steel rods hammered through bamboo and wood.
Yeah.
These spiked blocks were hammered to the bottom of a wooden box, which was then dug into a shallow hole or rice paddy. The top of the wooden box was covered with a thin frame with grass, crops, leaves, and mud camouflage. Once a soldier on patrol stepped on it, his leg would fall through and fall on the spikes or stakes inside. It was impossible to remove a trapped leg or legs without severe damage. Spikes were often smeared.
I apologize for the pausing, but just seeing that, just seeing those stakes getting impaled to your foot, it just kind of reminds me of my one incident that I was at the bonfire with a couple of my friends, and of course it was dark. You can't even see. You just basically, I was just trying to find something to keep the fire going, and my foot literally got got stuck into a piece of a board with nails on it, and well, luckily it was only just one nail, and oh my god, it hurt like a son of a bitch. And luckily that my good friend does work at the EMT, and thinking that they, well, kind of patch it up, but it was kind of, it hurt a little just to try to walk through it. So just thought I just wanted to let y'all know. Anyways, move on.
With excrement, urine, or poison to cause an infection within the victim's wound.
Oh.
Small punji traps had sides around 16 inches wide and were around 23 inches deep. There was also a large version of this punji stake trap. This huge hole was filled with sharpened bamboo stakes pointing in various directions. The top frame, fitted with a cover, was also made of bamboo, camouflaged with mud and leaves, and fastened around an axle. If a soldier stepped on it, he would fall into the pit, and the top cover would turn on the axle to its previous position, covering the trap and waiting for a new victim to fall in.
Yep.
During periods of ceasefire, insurgents would lock the cover with a bamboo crossbeam. This was the most basic design for a punji stake trap. Punji traps were laid wherever the enemy was likely to land with some force, such as stream banks, helicopter landing zones, or where they would take cover to escape gunfire, such as ditches, behind logs, or in long grass. Spike board.
Oh god.
Spike boards consisted of a treadle board with one side covered in spikes. If a soldier stepped on a treadle, the opposite spike side would fly up straight into his face or chest. The possibility of surviving the trap was very low. Trap bridge.
Oh,
the trap bridge was usually set up over a ditch filled with water or mud and lined with sharpened bamboo sticks. Sticks were cut low so they did not protrude over the water line, or the ditch was blocked to keep the water level high, therefore keeping them hidden. If this wasn't possible, then the sticks were covered in mud. The middle of the bridge was partially cut so that it would break under the weight of the soldiers crossing over it. Once the bridge broke down, all soldiers standing on it would fall on sharp bamboo sticks. Trap bridges were used to hinder the progress of search and clearing operations. Venus flytrap.
Okay, this one I'm not.
The Venus flytrap was another box trap. In the case of this trap, spikes were not hammered to the bottom of the box, but to its sides instead. Spikes were overlapped and pointed downwards.
Oh,
the injury would not be
God.
inflicted when the soldier's foot fell inside, but once he tried to get it out. Side closing trap. A side closing trap consisted of two wooden slats with spikes attached. Both slats were fastened to two guide rods made of iron and were tightened with heavy rubber bands.
Oh boy.
When a soldier dislodged the prop holding the slats apart, the slats would spring together, impaling his body. Bear trap.
Bear trap.
Another type of side closing trap, the bear trap, was a small trap that consisted of two spiked wooden boards joined at the end so they would pivot upwards. Boards were placed in a shallow camouflaged hole. Once stepped on, the boards would strike the victim above his foot.
Definitely.
This trap was a traditional
that's
used
far
by
worse
locals
than
for hunting
a
bears.
regular bear trap. Ah,
Tiger
shit.
trap. Another hunting trap
Tiger
was a
trap?
tiger trap. Unlike the bear trap, this one struck from above.
Oh, fuck.
The trap consisted of a large spike-studded board, suspended in a tree above the road or path and weighted with bricks and stones. The board was connected to a tripwire. When the wire was triggered by a patrolling soldier, it would unlink the trap to fall down and kill anyone standing below. Mace trap. Somewhat similar was the mace trap. Instead of falling down directly from above, the mace trap would swing down, taking out everyone in its way. The mace was made in various forms. It could be made as a concrete ball, a spiked mud ball, a wooden box, or as it was most often, a spiked log. Mace traps were usually very heavy and a large number of spikes were welded onto it. It was suspended in a tree on the end of a rope or cable and attached to a tripwire on the enemy pathway. Mace traps functioned as a pendulum, impaling the victims. It usually struck a large number of soldiers at once. It was one of the most frequent and most fearsome of all booby traps in the Vietnam War. Door trap. This type of danger also existed in buildings. Very often, these kind of swinging traps were scaled down to fit inside of a house. Door traps were given their name because they were suspended over the entrance of a doorway. By opening the door, the soldier would release the tripwire, which would release the spiked bamboo stick or a
I
smaller
don't know why,
log
but it
and
kind of
impale it.
reminds me of the Rambo
Bamboo whip
First
trap.
Blood.
Another distinctive Vietnam War booby trap was the whip trap. The bamboo pole was bent and held in an arched position by a catch connected to a tripwire. Stepping on the tripwire would simply release the catch, forcing the bamboo pole into its original position, striking the victim in the chest or legs. There were versions with or without spikes attached to the pole. Whip traps could be positioned at different heights depending on the surroundings. With or without spikes, the whip trap was powerful enough to inflict heavy injuries. Snake pits.
Oh my fucking lord.
Snake pits were a special kind of animal booby trap that American soldiers were most afraid of. The Vietcong often carried bamboo green pit vipers in backpacks, so if the enemy would search inside these backpacks, they would be bitten. The same sort of vipers were used inside rat tunnels tied to bamboo sticks. Once the stick was moved, the viper would fall on the passing soldier and bite him. Those vipers were also tied up to tree branches at face level. After a couple of days, due to hanging without any food, they would strike anyone that came within their vicinity. These snakes were highly venomous. Although an exaggeration, American soldiers nicknamed them two-step snakes. Hornet trap. A similar but less aggressive trap was the hornet trap. Hives of hornets or bees were placed along the patrol route and covered with a piece of paper fashioned to a tripwire. Once the trap was triggered, it would release the insects to the misfortune of the enemy soldiers. Very often, this kind of trap was accompanied by punji traps.
It's not painless,
Once
but
attacked by the hornets, soldiers
could
would panic and run away from the paved path straight into the hidden traps waiting for them. Arrow trap. This was probably the most sophisticated non-explosive booby trap. It consisted of a long wooden board with a 3 feet long bamboo tube attached to it. Inside the tube was an arrow powered by a strong rubber band, which was attached to the catch at the bottom of the board. The catch was connected to a tripwire laid across the path. Arrow traps were placed at an angle at certain distances, so when a victim triggered the tripwire, he would release the catch, holding the rubber band, and send an arrow straight into his own torso. Booby trap markers. The Vietcong designed booby traps to hold back American soldiers on their search and destroy missions. However, these traps were equally dangerous to all soldiers who bumped into them. So they created markers to indicate where there was a booby trap in the vicinity. By knowing how to interpret these markers, they could determine the distance and the direction of the booby trap. It was knowledge of vital importance to American patrols. The hard part was that there were many different markers. Sometimes these were sticks laid in patterns, forked sticks, folded palm leaves, or broken branches. Bamboo tripods and bamboo rectangles laid on the ground were standard markers, but even though they were relatively large, they were still hard to notice. Soldiers on patrol had to pay attention to too many things around them to be fully focused on noticing these markers. On long, tiring marches, their awareness was especially low, and in these situations, patrolling soldiers were easy victims to these potentially deadly booby traps.
Oh my sweet lord. Yep. They were sophisticated and creative, but most of all, that's the term of the most deadliest traps in Vietnam. It's just the spike part that impales your foot into your asshole. That's a one way you'll die in seconds. But the snake trap, fuck no, I'm not gonna mess with that. I am not gonna touch no snake. I'm rather just gonna cut the head off. Believe that I will. No offense, Shadow, but yeah, this is rather the most interesting clip. Well, educational. I think that's what it is. That was it about. But at the same time, you're lucky that I already ate, because the more I get to see this, the more I'm gonna puke. So yeah, Thank you. And I just hope this video does not get demonetized. I believe that's it. I got no words, literally. If you enjoyed that, leave a like, leave a comment down below, and I'm out. Mighty Venture signing out.